But you're going into a theater with some level of expectation, right? And then to just be moved to the point of tears, sad tears if you're crying, but also tears because you're laughing so hard. Where else in this world does that happen? And where does it happen with, 1,000 other people in the room?
I want to be a producer with a hit show on Broadway.
You're listening to the Producer's Perspective Podcast with your host, Tony Award winner, Ken Davenport.
Or we could use some common sense instead. When you're lost, it always helps recall.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Producer's Perspective Podcast. We've got group sales guru Stephanie Lee on. That's the prom, by the way you're listening. We're going to talk about the prom and selling group tickets to the prom on this week's episode with Stephanie Lee. No one knows sales in this business better than Stephanie. The sponsorship of this week's episode is by, well, would you look at that? It's really by me. It's by the Producer's Perspective Pro, which is our member site of theater makers. Gotta check this out. If you're a writer, producer, director, there is no better tribe of folk than the folks who are in the Producer's Perspective Pro. Go check it out, www.theproducersperspectivepro.com. We've got lots of resources from mailing labels to producers to webinars about how to raise money, you name it, it's in there, and a killer Facebook group. I mean, this thing is popping, and everyone's supporting their shows and getting shows up. It's a fantastic place to be. Go check it out, theproducersperspectivepro.com.
Way to separate which rules you can violate. Let's hope you don't masturbate, 'cause the scripture says we'll have to cut off your hands or we...
Hello everybody, welcome back to the Producer's Perspective Podcast. My name is Ken Davenport. I am thrilled you are with me today, wherever you are, on your treadmill or driving down the highway. One of the things I love doing with this podcast is shine the light on A-listers behind the scenes. We talk to Pulitzer Prize winners and Tony winners and all those. This person may not have one of those, but she deserves one for what she does. I'm talking about the kind of folks who run companies that you may not even think about, but play a vital role in making the industry as healthy as it is today. So today we have one of those very special people and a very good friend of mine. She's the head of the largest group sales company in the Broadway biz. That's right, most of those matinee ladies and bus tours go through her. Please welcome to the podcast the president and CEO of Group Sales Box Office at Broadway.com, Ms. Stephanie Lee.
Good morning, Cam. What an introduction.
Well, it's true. It's very well deserved. I mean, group sales is a massive part of our industry. It represents, what percentage? Do you know offhand, what percentage of...
Oh, gosh, I can only speak for us, of course, for Group Sales Box Office, but we range anywhere between 4 to 15% of the market share on a weekly basis overall. I'm not a mathematician. I just keep my head down and sell.
I mean, that's a big number. That's a big number. If all of a sudden group sales, look, last week we did $34 million. If all of a sudden $3 million fell off the gross, that would be a bad thing. And you're thankfully looking out for all those customers. So, you just said it, the three magic words, sell. So, where did you learn to sell?
Funny question. I don't think anyone ever grows up and says, ooh, I want to get a degree in group sales, the wholesale business of Broadway. I was literally born into it. After a lifetime on the stage, my father was trying to make ends meet, and he was house managing at that point of his life, in addition to acting. And he said, I think people would come here in groups. And he convinced a producer at the time. He said, would you incentivize groups, give them a discount if they came together? And if I sold it, he said, Ronnie, you're crazy. It'll never work. Lo and behold, 62 years later, Group Sales Box Office is thriving. Not just existing, but thriving. You look around, whether it's Times Square or even off Broadway, and there are groups of people coming to see shows, musicals, plays, and they're having this experience together. So some people joke around, you could say I was born in the Sardi's building.
Your father's actually, he's a legend in the industry for sure. When you say, oh, he was an actor. He wasn't just an actor. I mean, he had some pretty good credits. So.
He did. He was in the original production of The King and I, playing the prince. He was actually the replacement, but I met Yul Brynner years later, and it was just such a beautiful encounter for the two of them to reunite so many years later. But so yes, he was also in West Side Story, the original production. I think after his experience with Jerome Robbins, I think that's when he started to seek out other types of careers in the theater industry.
Jerome Robbins just driving people away from
yeah. Well, when his dancing legs weren't dancing anymore, that's when he started to open his eyes and look and see what he could do, but also how he could stay in the industry he literally grew up in since the time he was 4 years old.
That's a lot of folks. I think a lot of people get into it through performing, is what we know, and then certainly me and so many other people that do what we do, and then slide into another role. And he was literally the first group. I did not know this. He was the first group sales agency.
Yeah. From the story, as the story goes that he tells, there were other 2-for coupons. I don't know if you remember those, but my dad was, I believe, one of the first, or certainly one of the leaders in the industry. Over the years, there have been others who have actually come under the fold of our company as well, as you know. But yeah, he was a visionary for doing what he did. It wasn't always easy. Obviously, we're selling wholesale discounted tickets, but man, we're selling a lot. We sell, I say move like it's a product, but we sell anywhere between, 600,000 group tickets a year and up, depending on the year. I'm selling a product I have no control over. How crazy is that? So I fight hard for our clients. I wear so many different hats. I fight for discounts, reasonable discounts. I fight, do the good fight for content and what is going to help me sell tickets. At any given time, we're selling over 100 different events. Obviously not all Broadway shows, but over the years we evolved to become a one-stop shop because we're catering to tour operators, leisure groups, student groups, and everything in between. And they all want a trusted source to guide them through this wacky, zany place we call home.
So what piece of advice did your dad give you about selling that you still think about today, that you still remember? Anything as you were coming up?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely changed over the years with the, the digital age, and before that, the internet, when he started, and certainly when I came into the business, that didn't even exist. But I think the one remaining voice that is always there and present is be true to yourself, be honest. That way you can sleep well, you can put your head on your pillow at night and have a good night's sleep. And that's what I've always done. I have 28 staff in New York. We have more out in the Broadway across America markets, but I have an obligation to them. They're counting on me to lead them, and we have over 70,000 unique group buyers. I have an obligation to them. And with so many shows and so many different ticket pricing, and it's an experience. So I not only sell and focus on that, it's about supporting the sale the whole way through. And I think if anything, in this business there's a lot of egos, right? There's a lot of challenges, there's a lot of ebbs and flows depending on the season, depending on the shows, depending on the demand. So yeah, honesty and just working hard, and that's what I think I've always done a good job at, and taking care of others.
So this is going to be a very simplistic question, but what do you think the number one thing that group sales buyers are looking for when they're deciding on a show to see?
So I could give you several different answers, because I'll give you a different answer if you're a teacher, if you're a drama teacher. In a public school versus a private school, they're going to be looking for different things, possibly. But then there's a tour operator, a retail tour operator, who's hedging their bet. They're having to book their show early. Sometimes it's a title that is unknown, but also they're paying for it 6-8 months in advance, and then they have to sell that trip. So then you have a corporate group who wants to do a buyout. So that's a very different and unique interest that they're looking for. But again, depending on the demographic, depending on the goal of that group leader, you want a high level of live theatrical entertainment. You want a rate that will work for your client, right? Because the group leader isn't booking for him or herself. They're responsible for making that purchase and making that buying decision for tens, sometimes hundreds of others. So it's a very unique conversation to have, but it varies. That answer varies from group leader to group leader.
Do you find that your tastes align with the groups, or do you have to shift, like, oh, I loved X show, but I can't sell that, so, because that would not be giving the customer what they want. How do you negotiate that out?
So that's a great question, and it's one we internally talk about a lot, because our clients' success, especially if they're reselling those tickets to a busload of people, whatever the case may be, their success is our success. So that's why we keep a staff of 25 people on the phones. Sure, they have email. We're all utilizing the web to support what it is we do, but they are all on the phones having an open dialogue, because we have no vested interest in selling a show, a title, to a group that it's not right for. We're not going to sell, something with tough content. I'm not going to name titles, tough content to the Girl Scouts, right? It would be crazy. It's happened. So we stay objective while at the same time sharing our passion for whatever title it is we're talking about. And I am the luckiest person in the world to have such an informed, passionate, and talented team of people who truly love what they do, because they don't need to be babysat. They are all at the theater 2-3 times a week sometimes, depending on the time of season, just so they can do exactly what you asked, to share their enthusiasm, but also be objective with whomever it is they're talking to. We have to steer people to the right experience. It's not just about getting, the shiny toy that season. I want that. Well, let's talk about it. And that's what we do.
Any titles that you did say, oh, they may not know it, but they're going to love this, and I'm really going to sell this to them, and anything that was a surprise like that?
I hate to say it, but the obvious one for me most recently is Hamilton. I was fortunate enough to be included in the producers very early on readings, downtown, and then ultimately in the public. And when I get an insight like that early on, I can then share it with my sales representatives, but share it with our clients. And early on, I don't know if anybody remembers, we were able to sell, we had access to Hamilton. And they were very smart in how the way they handled it, the producers of that particular show, so that we had access. So it was buzzed about early on. But I was confident when I first experienced that show, like many others, right? I said, this is something special, this is something unique, and I can't wait to share my enthusiasm with my staff and with all our clients.
Was there resistance from the clients at first?
Sure, there was some. Well, what are you talking about? How can you do a musical, Broadway show with rap in it? It doesn't make sense. Keeping in mind, Ken, that I'm also still managing accounts that I did when I was, 20 years ago, when I was in my 20s. I'm still working with some of those women, yes, the Wednesday matinee ladies, but also other types that I've known forever. So I have all of their data, all of the shows they've ever booked. And then I come to them and say, well, you're not going to believe this, but trust me. Yeah. And that's where the conversation turns into trust, right? So a lot of those people, they do trust us. But yeah, there's been a number of titles where I thought, wow, this is something special. I hope they'll give us group access. And if they don't now, at some point in a show's life, they'll say, oh, we need the groups. So it's cyclical, and every title and every show and every creative team and producerial team is different in the way they handle their baby.
Well, let's talk about that. And I ask this because, I don't know, I may have a friend that's a producer like me. What's the biggest mistake that you see that producers make when rolling out their shows to the groups market? Because we all want it.
Right. We all share the same goal, right?
Right, exactly.
We just don't always remember to speak to one another, and especially in our various areas of expertise as we're speaking now. So the mistakes, first I'll say there's a lot of wins. There's a lot of successful examples, so we should talk about that too. But the mistakes that I most often see, the ones that keep me up at night, are the ones where, you know the saying, you don't know what you got till you know what you got? Oftentimes, a show will come out and not have the right access for groups, whether it's the entry point for a ticket, and they'll be what we call, too confident. Or else the ad and the advertising and the artwork doesn't really connect with who we're selling it to. And coupled with the fact that I am often selling a title and asking for money 6 months, 8 months before a national ad campaign even starts. So there's not a lot of support in the market for advanced group sales, and that's where I really see the most mistakes happen. I think what really made it even more complicated and less group friendly is when variable pricing came into the market. Those really, that model was intended for single ticket sales, right? Not the group market. I think, with the group market, a smart team will, what we used to call, front load with groups. I can book you 100 tickets, and sure, it'll be at a wholesale rate, but play for the long term. And then you have, if everyone's as confident about your title as you are, you have 100 ambassadors that just got into one of your preview performance, and they'll tell two friends, and they'll tell two friends. So I think the biggest mistake, the most consistent mistake is group rates, what they roll out with, and then backpedal when they see that it's not tracking the way that everyone had hoped. And that also happens with creative artwork, going out there with key art or title treatment and then retooling it after it's already been released.
Should there be two types of creative for the groups market, one for the groups market and one for the single ticket market, do you think?
It's not a bad idea, and I do think it should certainly be part of the dialogue. Because remember, the group market is not buying tickets on their phones. They're not, buying tickets because of how many likes they see on a Facebook page. It's just not how it works. A group market or a group buyer responds to, and yes, I will sound old-fashioned, they respond to printed material and then video content. Because for every group buyer, and again, it varies from demographic to demographic, but I have, for example, a tour operator, big tour operator who has a team of 15 selling Broadway and other itineraries and travel. So I need to deliver a piece or content, information that is shareable for that tour operator. So it does change from demographic to demographic. But yeah, I think different messaging, different content for a group market is a smart way to go.
Your insight into the mistakes that producers make is so right on. I know because I've made it myself. And then what's ironic about that is so many producers, even they know they're going to end up papering during previews. They know they're going to put 100 free bodies in or whatever it is just to fill the house to hopefully get ambassadors. But we forget that a paid body is so much more valuable than a free body. So why not give you whatever price you want so that you hopefully have a better chance of getting some paid, because that word of mouth is priceless.
Dynamically pricing groups, Ken.
Yes, I like this idea.
It's happening more and more, and you can't necessarily have a core for something like that, a common core, if you will, because it is so different whether a show's in previews and needs those bodies in the seats, or whether it's January, February, and the winter blues and you need those bodies in the seats. But you know what? There's also a lot of voices in the room when these decisions get made with regard to scaling a house, right? So you have a lot of voices, sometimes a lot of noise. But I couldn't agree with you more. If you know you're going to paper a house early on in previews, get group buyers in there. Get group buyers who haven't bought into it yet, who might, and who could be sold to following their attendance at a preview performance.
Is there such thing as pricing too low?
Yes, because it worries, it's a concern. Why is it so cheap? Why is it so inexpensive? And, I'd be foolish not to say, I'm just as incentivized as selling a higher price ticket than anybody, because I got to sell a lot more of them, right?
Right, we're not paying you a fee, you're getting a commission.
Yes, and it's not even 10%, okay? Let's get that straight. It's
It's
9.55. It's not.
9.55, which we should do a whole separate podcast on, by the way, because it's the most convoluted, complicated, ridiculous thing based on this thing called the Burton Turkis Award, the Ultimate
Yes.
Anyway, there's a blog about that somewhere, I'll link to it. But yeah, you're getting 9.55% of each.
Yeah, and it's a labor-intensive
And
job.
sometimes not even on Saturday nights. You're not gonna get it.
No.
You have to charge the customer more.
We're
money,
gonna
right?
pass that off. But again, we have so much, our company specifically has a wealth of data that I'm most times happy to share with really good partners. Because again, we have a shared vested interest in the show's success, the theater goers and the audience's experience together, to also continue to cultivate the Broadway audiences. I mean, look at the numbers that the league's reporting recently. Isn't that amazing? So for all of those naysayers who think maybe the group business is waning, I'm here to tell you it's not. We just have to collaborate more and be smarter about it.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're here today. This marketing insight is so good because you're here today because I saw you at a party and we were talking about a show and you were like, you'd be surprised what customers think of that show. And I had my mind exploded right there because you're actually one of the few people that talk to customers. Because I'm a producer, I sell tickets through telecharge, or if I don't go to see a show, I don't talk to my customers. You talk to them. What's the most surprising thing you've heard from a customer that even took you by surprise about something they wanted or needed, or their reaction to a show, or just the experience of going to Broadway, and you were like, oh my God, I never would think that you'd think that way?
Right, gosh, there's been so many over the years. It's hard to pinpoint one, and some aren't even appropriate to say.
So those are the good ones. So we love an explicit rating on
Oh.
so go for it.
No. Beauty and the Beast, bestiality, no.
Really?
Yep, from the Bible Belt. They wanted to come in and they wanted their Disney show, and they came to Beauty and the Beast. And then, I was in the office. My father got called, and the next morning, and this was like, what are you saying? It reminded me of the reaction of Jerry Falwell in The Purple Teletubby was gay. Like, where does this come from? They're sad to say, but there are some people, maybe Broadway isn't the right place for them, and it pains me to say that. But that was years ago. I think we've come a long way. I'd like to think we've come a long way socially. And but, I think consistently the best feedback that we get from our clients, because believe it or not, we still follow up the next day. So if you see a performance, you're getting a call the next day, is the emotional roller coaster that anyone can experience, whether it's Dear Evan Hansen, whether it's most recently Moulin Rouge, and I want these women calling say, I want to be 20 again. We all do, yes. But even when I was 20, I didn't have dancing legs like that. But it's really sharing of emotions that we are able to get from our clients who we've known, most of them who we've known for years and years. Or it's the, not just the sad bits, it's the humor. I've never laughed so hard, and I didn't expect that. So what a wonderful way to walk into a theater. You've paid for your ticket. You've been hopefully bombarded with smart artwork and marketing, but you're going into a theater with some level of expectation, right? And then to just be moved to the point of tears, sad tears if you're crying, but also tears because you're laughing so hard. Where else in this world does that happen? And where does it happen with 1,000 other people in the room?
So I often refer to Broadway shows as like giant steamships. That like once you get them in the water, it's very hard to turn them. They're sort of headed for the iceberg, or they're not. Have you ever seen an example of a show that has turned the Titanic, if you will, in the groups market, where like they were struggling?
Titanic, ironic.
Really?
No, just that you said that,
Okay.
the ship,
Yeah,
and it sunk.
Exactly. Are there any shows that struggled, they made some mistakes coming out, and then or something happened and all of a sudden the groups market exploded as a result?
Well, most recently, the play that goes wrong. So let's back up to the first New York Times ad in advertising. It was the tomato, right? The exploding tomato. So we're getting calls what's the tomato show? Forgetting that the title was even there. They were solely focused, our group buyers were focused on the tomato. You know, what's the tomato show? So anyway, long story short, and you go forward, and it was a successful show, but I think what was not anticipated is that it was the perfect show for the students. Killer business from a market, from an audience demographic that nobody was even, I think, considering at the beginning. And this one show, just, they were hysterical. And I'm sure that's why you got involved, but going in and seeing these groups of kids just laughing.
It's just such a, first of all, that Disney comment about Beauty and the Beast and the tomato is just such a reminder. I love hearing that, even though it's like, how could you ever think that? But I love hearing it because it's just a reminder that we don't know at all what our customers are really thinking unless we have someone like you on the front lines listening to these comments that don't make any sense to us, but that's what they think.
Oh yeah. And some of them are, well thought out and actually pretty helpful and insightful, while others you just nod your head and say, okay, you fancy yourself a theater critic like so many others. It's been nice talking to you, but I have to go now. But yeah, I mean, but as far as turning a show around, that's tough. I mean, I think you would probably have better insight, from a producer's side of it. Zero.
It's hard. I mean, that's the
I
thing.
can't.
Once these things get in the water, it's very hard to turn them into a big fat hit anyway. You can certainly turn them and cut costs and do these things to try to get out or maintain.
Or survive.
Yeah, exactly.
But then you have to look at the numbers and say, is survival here in our backyard worth it? Do I call it a day? Do I go on tour? Did I reach my stop clause? Or am I almost there? Am I getting pushed out? There's so many factors that play into that.
So you've seen more shows than probably anybody because you have to see all these things so that you can recommend them to your clients.
Yeah.
And forget the sales aspect. What do you think producers, writers, directors, what's the biggest mistake you think they make in creating shows? Put your critic hat on for a second.
Ooh, I could get in trouble here. No, that's a tough question because I really, I'm not a theater kid. I didn't go to school for theater. I'm not trained in any way. I just know what I like. I know what I like. I know when something moves me in one direction or another. But then I know when I see something and I'm looking at my watch and looking at the door, but without naming names or titles, I think it probably happens more often than either you or I are aware of, right? When you look at a show or you hear about a show and from conception to how long it takes to actually put it on stage, I can't imagine what that journey must be like for the producerial team, for the creative team, for the cast members. So I don't know, that's a tough question, Ken.
That's what we do here. It's very like The View. Any shows that you've seen that you just love, that you were like, I'm going to sell the crap out of this, and for some reason the group sales market did not respond at all, and you can't understand why?
Yes.
So tell us one of those stories.
The Prom.
The Prom.
I absolutely love this show. My staff, 99% of my team loves it, and they took it hard when we realized it was having some challenges, when it was struggling. But some of the smartest producers I've ever worked with, Dory Bernstein and Bill Damask, because they brought us on so early. I went to Atlanta at their request, went to Atlanta, talked to them, and continued an open dialogue the whole way. And was brought along into the process of the Prom. And so my enthusiasm and my passion was so much so that my sales team couldn't wait to see for themselves, and they did. And they embraced this show like nothing I've ever seen before. They loved this like it was their own. And we did outside the box telemarketing groups that we had never even contemplated calling before. And that one hurt, I think, a lot when we just couldn't figure out what the problem was. Why weren't our groups responding? I think the obvious excuse, and I will call it an excuse because we heard it on the phone. We had a lot of conversation about this with internally and then with our clients. We don't feel comfortable with the content.
It's the kiss, the two lesbian
It's crazy.
teenagers
And then
kissing.
you get to the Thanksgiving Day parade and we get cancellations the next day.
You did.
Yeah.
So this is
yeah.
like one of the questions I wanted to ask you when you brought this up, because first of all, those producers I'm such big fans of, and I became even bigger fans of them when they did that Thanksgiving Day parade and they did that kiss at the end, because I think deep down they had to know this may not go well in terms of some sales. Did you know in advance? Were you part of that conversation that was
No.
going to happen?
No, but I
Would
was.
you have done it differently?
Nope.
If you were the producer?
I think Dory and Bill, at least from my experience and interaction with them, they were very realistic and honest about what they had there and the message. And I don't think they ever strayed from that. You know, some producers I have seen and worked with that get scared, get gun shy. They see a response that may affect the larger picture, and they change tactics and change strategy. I love that Bill and Dory didn't run from that. Sure, the artwork was tweaked a little bit and some of the messaging and advertising, but as far as that decision to do the kiss at the Thanksgiving Day parade, good on you. Go for it. But also, I mean, look, they have the book come out, and look at the film that they're putting together. I think they're going on tour. They should go on tour, but man.
It's an amazing story, and I'm glad they got the long run that they did out
Yeah.
of it. They've been around a while. It's one of those tough things, because I often play what would I do in those cases, and of course my instinct is to do exactly what they did. This is who we are, this is the show we are, we're going to be proud of it, we're going to tell it. But then the other side of me sometimes says, but if I don't show it, those people that canceled would have come to see the show, and maybe they would have loved it, and their minds would have been changed and be a little more open to it. It's a very difficult decision for a producer.
It is, and I guess that's why I don't gamble, because I can't make those decisions. But you hedge your bets, right? But I think at the end of the day, they can do as my father told me. You can know that you lived honestly, and you can put your head on your pillow that night and have a great night's sleep. That's what they did.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. I mean, look, it's a business, but it's also an art, and we're trying to put out a message, so be proud of what you are and who you are, and that was the message of the damn show.
Exactly.
So for them actually not to do that might have been a little contradictory.
And the groups that did come to see it, they were over the moon. They were so happy. It was such a wonderful experience. We had educators come in. We had student groups that wanted to come back and see it again, even if they didn't have the budget in their school funds. It was all the people who got to experience the prom this past season absolutely loved it.
The marketing trick that I've done before, that sometimes just for those people listening on what to do, sometimes is to make some hay about the fact that some people are turning away from you, because what you can do is then get the people that love you to actually love you and support you even more, because some ignorant folks are turning away.
Right.
That's fascinating subject, and I was a big fan of the show myself. Okay, my last question. I call it my genie question. I assume you've sold a lot of tickets to Aladdin over the last several years.
Yes.
So I want you to imagine the genie from Aladdin comes to visit you, and he may have actually, because one of the things that us producers do with group sales agents is we often send the actors to the offices to meet all the sales folks and to do a little tap dance or give them schmackeries cookies or something like that. So who knows, but maybe he did make an appearance, but this time the genie comes and is going to grant you a wish, wants to say thank you for selling all those tickets and selling 4 to 14% of tickets for all of Broadway, and say thank you by giving you this wish and allowing you to wish away one thing in this business, the one thing that drives you crazy, gets you angry, slamming your phone down, flipping tables. What would you ask this genie to wish away that frustrates you the most?
Ooh, that's a big one, which is why I see why you saved it for the genie. I would wish away all the noise in the room And with regard to the group market, come talk to me, engage my team early on, and let's collaborate and communicate in a smarter way. That's all.
It's such a simple answer and such a good one. I've known you for years. I know all the group sales agents, but still there feels like this little gap or divide between us because we're developing and producing on our own, and we just want to think, just sell it. And everything in this business has to be a collaboration, not just with the artists, certainly with the people that are on the front lines of selling our tickets to such a huge number of people. So I vow to do that on my next show.
Thank you, Ken.
And I urge all of you to do that as well. And if you've got a show on Broadway, definitely reach out to Stephanie. And if you're looking to purchase tickets to a show, you should go to Broadway.com, group sales box office at Broadway.com. They'll take great care of you. We actually I used to have a group sales business called Your Broadway Genius, and it was very happily absorbed by Stephanie and her company, and we're thrilled that our clients are over there getting such great care and attention. So check them out if you've got a group and need tickets to a show. Thanks to all of you for listening, and we will see you next time. Thanks again to Stephanie Lee for joining us today and teaching us all about how to sell tickets to Broadway shows, because let's face it, if we don't know how to sell tickets to Broadway shows, none of us will ever have a job ever again. So thank you, Stephanie, for being very good at what you do and sharing that wisdom with us. Speaking of wisdom, here's some. Come to the Producer's Perspective Super Conference on November 16th and 17th of this year. Join all the Broadway A-lister speakers we have, including Joe Iconis and Heidi Schreck as our keynote speakers. We got 2 keynotes this year. And most importantly, there are going to be 500 people just like you out there. Broadway theater makers to be, fans, you name it, they're going to be in this audience. Directors, writers, actors. And I'm telling you, when you get this many passionate people in one place, incredible things happen. I guarantee it. So come join the tribe. It's going to be a lot of fun, very educational and inspirational at the same time. If you are loving this new podcast season, do me a favor. Give us a good review on Apple Podcasts. If you are not enjoying it, then just stop listening. How's that? But seriously, the good reviews help other people find us. And it helps push not only our guests, but also just the theater in general. And we want to do everything we can to promote the theater. If you need more information about booking group tickets to Broadway shows, visit Broadway.com and tell them Stephanie Lee sent you. And hey, are you following me on Instagram? My handle is simple, @KenDavenportBway. Instagram, Facebook, that's where I throw out all my new releases of information. So new shows that I'm doing, all that stuff, be the first to know. Follow me at KenDavenportBway. And now, here's that fun time of the week. I know you've been waiting for it. We're going to introduce you to a brand new songwriter, #Songwriter of the Week right now. Today we have the song How We Grow, a song from Ryan Scott Oliver's musical theater concept album, 3 Points of Contact. If you like what you hear, you can find more of this kind of music over at his website, ryanscottoliver.com. So listen in, enjoy, and we'll see you next week with a brand new episode of the Producer's Perspective Podcast.